Okay. Wow, look at this turnout. Oh my gosh. Where is everybody? This is like such an
They're
important
stuck
class.
in traffic, they're coming.
This is such an important class. I'm like joking, but I'm not joking. So there has been litigation that's been going on for many, many years. And
I don't think so, no.
so we have, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I start off talking about litigation.
All good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
So NAR dues are expensive, right? Where we just signed up for CAR, NAR, it's expensive.
Yes.
When you go to renew your dues, there's gonna be optional stuff that they try to get you to pay for. And in the past, they've always said how important these extra fees are because they're out there doing the battle for us behind the scenes that we don't see. NAR is a very powerful lobby. They have lobbyists, they're always talking to politicians and basically what NAR has been doing has been protecting our commissions. So we've had the benefit of standard commissions being 6%, a standard commission across the country, 6%. In high-priced areas such as ours, luxury area, we're gonna see probably a lot of 5% listings. But agents have always fought for 6%. I always share my story. I went on a listing appointment on Maple, Beverly Hills 90212, beautiful modern house. And I brought in a pre-filled listing contract at 5%, sharing 2.5% with the buyer's agent. And I'm going over my listing contract with the seller and we're signing everything. And he gets to the commission part and he goes, "Aren't commissions 6%?" And I had filled in 5%.
Oh.
Right, I'm thinking myself like, oh my God, I just gave away like 1%. I just lost, and that was that back then. That was a $3.5 million property, and yeah, it's like 35,000. Right,
Keeps you up at night.
I'm like, oh, done. So I always pre-fill 6% on my listings, just because that is a standard commission. Now we're talking about standard commissions. Now this whole litigation stuff that's going on right now is. There are arguments to try to basically make it less expensive for a seller to sell their property, I guess. They're saying it's like commissions it's collusion, maybe if all the brokers team up and say they're not gonna list property less than a certain amount. The fact is commissions are negotiable. They are. It's not something that's pre-filled in the contract. Anything that has a place where we need to fill something in, it's negotiable. So I really feel that a buyer is at a disadvantage if they don't have representation. Whenever I talk about the agency disclosure, there's an agency disclosure and there's also the possible there's possible agency relationship disclosure also. So it's saying that there are agents that are sellers, that represent sellers. There's agents that represent buyers. And then in dual agency, you can have an agent that represents both a buyer and a seller. Obviously, that's what we do. Our brokerage represents buyers, sellers. And if we happen to have an agent in the office that has a listing, there's another agent in the office or that agent represents a buyer for the same property, that's dual agency, right? Now, when I explain agency to someone, I tell them that the agent's duty is to get the seller the most money. That is, laws are there to protect sellers from getting their property stolen out from under them. Makes sense, right? They own a property and they need to get the most money for their property. We're not trying to steal a property out from under them. So I think laws are there to protect sellers as far as getting sellers the most money. And your duty to everybody, your fiduciary duty to everybody is honesty, fair and honest dealing. So you have to be fair and honest to everybody, obviously, we can't lie. And then buyers, that means full disclosure. So I can't hide something that I know from a buyer that may affect them making an offer on a property, or something that could materially affect the amount of money they're willing to offer on a property, right? So usually I'll get a call from an agent, do I need to disclose this? And my answer is usually, if you're asking the question, probably, right? Like, why would you be asking the question? So if it's a question, do I need to disclose? Yes. Now, if a buyer does an inspection on a property and the seller has a copy of that inspection, and then the buyer backs out with that deal, and then a new buyer comes in, that inspection needs to be disclosed. Okay, because it's material, there's pictures there, it's not just an opinion. If there was a previous appraisal, I might consider that an opinion and not really a factual disclosure, because that's an opinion. But if it's something that's material, there's pictures, it's actual fact, seek the crack, that would be something that you have to disclose. So sellers would have to disclose previous inspections that they have. But going back to the agency, we have to have fair dealing with everybody. That's our fiduciary duty. And then our obligation to a seller to get them the most money, for a buyer, full disclosure. Okay. Now, buyers in that case, so let's just say we're in a situation where we are the listing agent and a buyer comes in without an agent. And we facilitate the transaction by writing their offer. Seller, we get a deal, or we have a meeting of minds on a price and terms. Now it's time to advise the buyer of what they should be inspecting for. How willing am I to tell a buyer that they should have 6 or 7 different inspections if I'm the listing agent and the buyer's agent, right? Because now there could be a little conflict of interest. Like, who am I really representing here? So I'm representing the seller to get them the most money. Now I have to recommend to the buyer, I guess, what the available inspections are. So we have a form with Keller Williams called a waiver form, and it actually talks about all the different kinds of inspections. And we actually make that form required here. So it does give an opportunity for a buyer to see all the available inspections. So what would inspections be? Like, just call them out. What do you think we would be inspecting? Termite inspection, sewer inspection, a roof inspection, general inspection. So the general inspector is going to go through, he's going to go over the property. He's going to call out if he finds moisture, right? He might say, I'm seeing something funky with the foundation, you should get a foundation inspection. You might be involved in a deal property on a hillside where you need geological inspection, right? Someone is checking the dirt, making sure the property's not going to slide down the hill. So there's all these different inspections. So property has a pool, it could be a pool inspector. So, we just have to keep this in mind when we have a buyer and if I'm hearing myself.
Echoes.
You're doing Zoom and then.
Um,
I'm trying to turn it off. Leave this
It's
door.
like
So everyone you have to be conscious of not getting sued. Like, really, we don't ever want to be in a situation where the buyer says, you didn't tell me this, you didn't tell me that, you should have advised me this, you should have advised me that. That's my litmus test every day, is I don't want, I'm very careful what I put in writing. Now, I would advise, don't put anything in writing if you can do that. Have verbal conversations. There are times where you do want things in writing, but we can get in a lot of trouble if we're starting to type paragraphs. That's just that. We don't want to do that. Also, we have CAR contracts, and we really want to use those contracts. We don't want to have our own contracts, or we're not attorneys to make up language. We want to use the CAR contracts, and our errors and omissions insurance covers us when we use the CAR contracts. All right, so
The only exception is when you're selling a brand new truck,
Ah.
they require you to use theirs, you have one.
So there are contractors out there that have, they might have their own contract that's been DRE approved. So it's already gone to the DRE and gone through their approval process, and then they insist on using that. When that's used, I would say we need to get broker approval for that. Yes.
So we do have a form, it's called use of non-standardized forms, because there will be instances where a builder or, developer does have their own contract. I don't know if it's been DRE approved, but, a lot of times the buyer will have no choice but to use it. In which case our E&O insurance will still cover us as long as you're not drafting your own contracts, because that would require,
So, yeah, so did you create that form for us?
well, it used to be, it was created by brokers, but then Zip Forms made it a standardized.
The non-standard form?
I think,
I think
Um,
so. I think
okay.
I know we have it in our thing. 'Cause
Okay, so I know we do have a Keller Williams Beverly Hills form.
Yeah,
Right.
what it is, they made it not a form, but like a letter. So
Letter.
card.
But it gets signed
It gets signed.
as a disclosure.
Yeah, we have it, whenever it's a non-standardized form.
All right, so guys, just know that that exists. Like, if someone is using a form or a contract that's not CAR, we should have that additional disclosure that says, be wary, this is not a CAR form.
You should have your attorney look at it.
Have your attorney look at it. From my experience in the office, when there ever becomes anything that could become litigious in the future, the attorneys here are they recommend that everyone has an attorney. Like they want the buyer to have an attorney, they want the seller to have an attorney. They would really appreciate if the clients have that attorney reviewing contracts. If there's any question, nobody wants to get into litigation. We just don't want.
And then it turns into a 6-month closing and a
Ah,
disaster.
we just don't, we want to avoid it at all costs.
Okay.
If you do have a contract that's non-standardized, non-CAR, you could send it to me, and I could review it, or I could send it to our risk management attorney, and he'll review it, but he'll eventually say what JJ just said.
I also just wanted to share something. If you ever see your client being asked to sign a hold harmless agreement,
Okay.
a hold harmless agreement.
Oh, yeah.
So there are boilerplate hold harmless agreements that say that the seller is not responsible for known and unknown items. Here's the problem, known. You can't relieve them of disclosing known items. So whenever you see a hold harmless agreement, make sure you're looking for the language known and unknown and cross out known. Don't be afraid to cross something out like that. But again, on something like that, you should have broker, just have them take a look at it. But you should never be relieving a seller from a known disclosure. They have to disclose. It's a seller's obligation to disclose. There's also situations where someone doesn't have to sign a transfer disclosure statement, a TDS, a transfer disclosure statement. So the seller has to disclose. We have two specific forms that get filled out, not just an electronic signature. They actually get filled out and answered. Has the property been painted recently? Has someone passed away on the property in the past 3 years? So is anything not functioning? These are things that have to be filled out. So that's going to be on the transfer disclosure statement or on the seller property questionnaire. If they're not obligated to fill it out, it's because it's a trust or the person hasn't lived there. There's a different form called the exempt. It's an exempt disclosure, an exempt seller disclosure, but they still have the obligation to disclose. If they know anything about the property, they have to disclose. Yeah.
I'll make it. Okay, so this happened to me a couple of times. I'll run into a situation where the buyer is an attorney
Yes.
and then they.
I love working with attorneys, by the way.
Oh, my God.
I love it.
It's a disaster.
No, I love it. I do love it.
Then when you send them the offer to sign it, and they return it with entire paragraphs and
Crossed out,
sections
yeah.
crossed out, and then they argue it.
Then it has to go to our legal review.
Okay,
yeah.
and then they won't sign it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they
So
argue.
anytime they're crossing out paragraphs in the contract, it has to go for our review. And then we will probably advise them to have their own attorney Like everyone will have to have attorneys reviewing everything.
But the problem with that is the seller won't approve and they just, you know.
Right, so we need a meeting of the minds. Everyone has to have a
The
meeting.
seller won't agree.
So that, yeah, Robert,
I found years ago, decades ago, I had young attorneys or just new attorneys always crossing out and contradicting themselves. And I found there was one line that worked to get that to stop forever. I haven't had it
Please share.
for decades, and it was just simply, I did a deal with one of the most powerful real estate attorneys in LA. He didn't cross out anything. He just said, if you do something wrong, I'm gonna cut your legs off. I can argue anything in this contract. He didn't change anything. And I reminded him many decades later, he said it, he goes, he didn't remember saying that, but he is top. But if you say that to a lawyer, they don't want to admit they're a new lawyer. You say you used to have new lawyers do that. And it's written to be neutral by lawyers for the whole state of California. So there's no reason to change anything. It covers everything.
Yeah.
It's just someone gets out of law class, they want to show that they can change contracts, but
Is it even?
really, if you're a powerful attorney, you can argue anything. You don't have to change any.
I could also argue that someone who is crossing out portions of a contract, I would hold them to a higher standard that they have read and understand the contract.
Well, it's just their ego. That's
Yeah.
really what it was.
But they could theoretically be held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Because if they don't cross out anything, they could say, well, this is boilerplate language, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know, there's arguments for everything.
Yeah.
But I would say someone who's crossing stuff out could be held to a higher standard. Like, they're gonna hold us to a higher standard because we're licensees. Right? The court would expect us to know the contract better than someone who's not a licensee.
right.
So,
And if you represent both sides, you're guilty instantly.
Yeah.
yes, so that's what I was saying, like, if we're in a situation where there's dual agency, that's where we have to be really careful on dual agency. We just don't want the buyer to say, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. So disclose.
What I actually did, just so not to get into that situation. When I did an open house and I got a direct buyer, I actually let a colleague represent the buyer. And I got a referral.
That's,
I
yeah,
took a referral instead, because,
What did you say? I'm sorry.
you know, you can tell it.
But somebody else,
Yeah.
if you're a listing agent and somebody comes into an open house, let somebody else in the office take over and represent the buyer.
Yeah.
You can get a referral fee from that buyer, but you know, at least you're separating yourselves. There's an inherent, like they say, conflict of interest if you're doing both sides of the deal. You can't possibly represent the seller's interest to the high regard that you need to and the buyers.
now, we are really used to listing agreements. Right? Listing agreement, you know, basically, we're gonna do listing agreements next week. Are we one short?
You could,
I have a lot. So we're used to listing agreements, right? A listing agreement basically just says, you know, we're gonna put your property on the market. And then we have a listing period, you know, hopefully starting today. So I do want to discuss that for a second because it was brought up at the meeting yesterday. So we want our listing agreements to start today. Whenever the day is that you're meeting with the seller, the listing agreement should start that day. And we are going to use a form called SELM. We'll go over this next week. But I just wanted to communicate the process. So SELM, it's the seller exclusion from listing from the MLS. Basically, the way that we're doing our listing, I'm getting text, I just want to make sure I'm not getting text from people that are on the. Okay. We are starting our listing today, and then we're going to put in our SELM form that we're not going to market the property until it's photo ready, basically. Because don't forget, we need to fix up the property, we need to clean it up. We have to get our photographer in there once that's done. And then once we get our pictures back, then we can put it on the MLS. And we want it to start in the MLS as day 0. Right? So we don't want it to start day 7, day 14. It's like a stale listing already. We'll talk more about that next week. I just wanted to talk about that process. Any questions? Yeah,
I have a question. So what do you take with you to a listing appointment?
so yeah, so on Wednesday, next week, we're gonna go through a listing package and the listing appointment. And I also have, in my shared folder, if you're not on my shared folder, email me, but in my shared folder, I have, lots of different samples of listing presentations. So I would say like, we should always be improving our listing presentation. And that's gonna probably be anywhere between 6 and 20 pages. Of, it's gonna be our bio, it's gonna be our company, why work with us. It's gonna be our value proposition. And any time that you come across any kind of marketing material that you think will help you in a listing presentation, you should have a folder on your computer or a manila folder and put it in there. You're gonna come across stuff that you're gonna say, wow, that would be great for a listing presentation. At that moment, put it into a folder, listing presentation, or bookmark it or something. Because you just want to always be improving that. Also get testimonials from your clients. If you work with someone, make sure that you ask for a testimonial at the end of that deal, right before the deal's over. That's the best time to get a testimonial from someone, and testimonials are fantastic for listing presentations. It just puts it over the top. Also, that's how I feel about being part of Beverly Hills. Like a big reason to be Beverly Hills agent, you're bringing the name Beverly Hills with you. Like half your bottle is fought and won already. Like I can go get a listing anywhere, Calabasas, Woodland Hills, Pasadena. I'm the Beverly Hills agent, right? So a seller might be interviewing the local agent and I'm the Beverly Hills agent, equal competition, right? But if we're in a different office, I don't think we have that same pull. I really feel there's a lot of value to Beverly Hills. All right, let's get into, I want to show you guys on command how to customize the KW buyer presentation. So we're going to do that. But I want to go through this. Okay, so let's. Your time is valuable. Your time is valuable, right? When we work with sellers, we get a listing. Right? They sign a listing agreement. If we're going to be spending a lot of time working with buyers, we want to make sure that they are going to use us as their agent. It's only fair, right? I can't tell you how many times you're going to hear, I've heard, you're going to hear agents that have been working with someone for so long, they walk into a property and they use another agent, right? They write their offer with listing agent, another agent. I said it at the meeting last night, but I want to say it again. Whoever has the money in the family, that's your client. Okay, you can be working, it's really important. Like you could be working with your friend and you've taken them to 100 properties. And all of a sudden your friend calls his parents or his rich uncle and says, I found it, this is it, I need $1 million. And that family member is like, whoa, what did you find, what? Let me call my agent. This is the family member saying, let me call my agent. We'll investigate it. I'll write the offer. You're out and you're out. It happens. This is real. So I'm telling you, just to involve that family member, like when you're in your investigative state with the buyer, ask them where's the money, and they should be talking to a lender. So part of the danger is never getting your buyer pre-qualified, because the lender's asking where the money is, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
What I learned to do from that incident is that I ask for the donors or parent, spouse, whoever it is, ask for their email address and I start
include them.
copying them.
Yeah, brilliant.
Everything. When I send them listings,
Yes,
even
beautiful.
IO, when I listings,
That's great.
I have them.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm. Perfect. So it's involving them in the process. So then when that deal comes, they're prepared for it. Like they see it's a deal, right?
Text messages to get their phone number.
That's brilliant. Love it.
Group.
Love it. Okay, so I'm sure that's gonna help everyone here in the future. Okay, now the buyer representation form. I want to talk just a little bit about it because it's a little different than a listing. So we use the exclusive representation listing agreement. And that means that when we take a listing, if that seller sells to anybody during the listing period, we're getting paid, right? We have an exclusive listing. Now, on the buyer representation agreement, there's a checkbox for exclusive representation. If you look at 4B2, there's actually a checkbox there for exclusive representation. So don't forget to check that box, maybe put a giant circle around it right now. Now, when we use this form, there's a couple of forms that we're gonna have to use in conjunction with it. And I've attached them. If you go scroll back, if you go a few pages later, one of them is called Notice of Broker Involved Property. So that's one form. Notice of Broker Involved Properties, do you see that? It's a few pages, yeah. A separate form, Notice of Broker Involved Properties. We'll get to it. I just want to point them out that we're going to have to use them. There's also something called Anticipated Broker Compensation Disclosure. So part of using a buyer representation agreement is that we now need to disclose the potential commission that we're going to be getting. It has to be disclosed up front, and it has to be disclosed right before closing. So just like a lender has to give a TRID, a lender has to give like the costs. They have to give it up front, and they have to give it a few days before closing. We have a requirement, if we're using the buyer representation agreement also, to tell the buyer how much we're getting in commissions before and right before closing. Yeah, so now you can use it on this form, the anticipated broker compensation form. You can use that, or with as long as, or you can use the regular MLS printout. You know how we print out the MLS info sheet? If we're printing out the agent detail on that sheet, it shows what the commission to the selling office is. So when you're looking on the MLS at an agent detail, it says CSO. That's the commission that we're being offered if we represent the buyer. It's CSO is the commission to the selling office, or the selling office. The seller's office is the listing. Selling is the buying. Okay, let's go back to the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement.
Oh, JJ?
Yes.
Oh, hi, it's Brian on Zoom. Brian
Brian
Katz.
on Zoom.
Quick question, do we have to tell a percentage or the actual dollar amount? If we just say a percentage? Do we have to tell-
So the percentage is sufficient, but let's look in our buyer representation agreement. If you're at home, pull up a buyer representation agreement if you can in CAR. It's form BRBC. Now, I didn't print out the agency. Agency is page 1 of this, just like a listing, just like purchase agreement. Agency always has to be signed before we work with a client. So an agency disclosure just says that there are agents that represent buyers, represent sellers, and possibly both buyers and sellers. And in that instance, they're talking about this agent. Okay, so sorry for the people on Zoom. We're really trying to get you to come into the office. So it's been a discussion at our ALC meetings. How do we get agents into the office? Because we feel that it's more engaging, more involved. We want you to be in the atmosphere. We're hearing real estate speak from agents all over the place. It's going to get you more productive. So we're trying to scale back on Zoom if we can. We've been in this Zoom world, but we really want you to come in. Okay, so let's look at the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. So obviously you have the name of your buyers. Keller Williams Beverly Hills is our broker. We're going to start that today, and hopefully they'll give you 180 days, I would think. Now, yes, please.
So they made a point, it's not like the listing agreement is for a term, so it starts on one date and ends at a certain date. They specifically call our standard forms wanted it to have the days that the agreement was in effect because they wanted the buyers to know that this agreement's in effect for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So I don't know if you've noticed if it doesn't have a starting date and an ending date.
to protect commissions. And if, the way that I'm feeling about this, so how did the lawsuits come about? Sellers felt that they were forced to pay the buyer's commission. Basically, I mean, the idea was, sellers are being forced to have high closing costs, right? Now, the whole idea of being part of an MLS, thank you, Sophia. The whole idea of being part of an MLS is that it's offering the buyer's agent commission. It's cooperating commissions. That's the whole idea behind an MLS. Like you share, I'll share mine if you share yours, right? The lawsuits were saying the MLS should not require a buyer's commission.
So you have two groups. You've got the sellers that have.
You got the sellers saying I'm being forced to spend so much money on
And
closing
then
costs.
you also have buyers that are claiming that their commission, their broker's commission has already been predetermined for them without their input by.
Right,
That was another.
right. So who's actually paying the commission? The
So,
buyer. The buyer is actually paying the commission.
Yeah, because.
Because they're the one paying the
Yeah.
purchase price.
and it's already been predetermined for them. So it's a class action on both sides and it's heading in the direction of the commission may not be, already in the.
See, the
MLS.
commission appears on the seller's settlement statement. It comes out of the seller's side on the accounting. But if the buyer is the one deciding the price, the money's actually coming from the buyer. So this is where the whole thing comes from. So
And the loser is gonna be a
the
buyer.
loser's gonna be the buyer, right? That's what I'm saying.
As I said, you have to show your value. You have
Yeah,
to.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, but
You need to do everything that JJ was talking about as far as like with inspections and, the procedures. I think one of the good things that you have in your handout is the
The interview.
and also the no, you did something.
Unfortunately, with all these apps, the zero, red, and all that stuff.
Yeah, with
a lot of buyers
1%.
gonna Directly go to the listing agent. They're gonna skip buyer's agent.
So a buyer that does not have a buyer's agent. So this is where, if a seller is saying to you, why should I sign this? Why? I don't want to sign this. Why should I sign this? And a buyer needs to know this is the biggest investment of their life. I mean, anytime you're dealing with this kind of money, this is a huge financial decision. Just for an example, I had a family member who was looking to buy something around here. We found a property on Doheny. It was a very, it was an expensive property. I mean, all property around here is expensive. It was an expensive property. We had an inspection and the inspector noted in one little sentence that he found some wood in the crawl space underneath the house that had creosote. It's one sentence, creosote. I saw that and I know that the buyer is pregnant, have a baby soon. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been down this road before. It's a toxic, it smells like gasoline and it emits toxins into the air and you can't get rid of it. So I didn't say anything except just research this. That was my advice. Just research it. Do your own research on this. Don't ignore the sentence. And basically, we backed out of that deal. If it was any other buyer, or if it was a buyer without representation, they would have not known, they would have gone into that deal. And then they would have found out that it could be several $100,000 to jack up the house, remove the affected wood, replace it, right? So, yeah.
What was the strategy behind not advising the buyer to go ahead with the?
Well, we should always advise the buyer to inspect. Our broker's duty is to advise a buyer to inspect. That's our duty. So the waiver actually says, the broker advises you to inspect and you are not inspecting based upon your own, you're not following you're not following our advice is what it says.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, so. But what is a buyer getting? They're getting an extra set of eyes that is familiar with real estate transactions. You know, even, I would say even a real estate attorney is great for legal disputes, fantastic. But for day-to-day operations in the activity of buying and selling a property, that's not what they do every day. They're looking at contracts, they're disputing contracts, but they're not in the field, you know, looking at houses, inspecting houses. So that's where our value is, to protect the client, to give them proper advice on what they should be looking for. Right, that's our value. Hopefully that doesn't get taken away from us. The person that loses here is the buyer, really, right? By not having adequate representation.
And a buyer's agent for their commission too,
Yeah.
you know,
But
because
the buyer is the one that's gonna get hurt here, because they could be buying a problem. People will lose life savings, like trying to get out of, they'll lose a lot of money. If they buy properties that have issues, there's like, right now, look, just talking about the age of Los Angeles right now. We're in 2023, a lot of the homes are now 100 years old is the standard now. And the foundation, the cement under the foundation is crumbling, right? So this is common for anything that has sprinklers or water's coming in and hitting the side of the house, you know. Going forward, but we need buyers agents. Yeah, we have, for sure.
but at the same time with this Zillow and Redfin and 1% commission and
It's really hard.
Huh?
It's really hard. They're
Are you
taking
kidding me?
all of our sources
I've given it
away.
I've given it a lot of thought, yeah.
Will the MAR prevent the listing agents from dual agency? At least that could.
So unfortunately, there's a bunch of brokerages that are involved in this lawsuit. Unfortunately, there was one brokerage that settled instead of waiting to go to trial. That brokerage that happened to settle is like $2 billion in debt already. Like if anyone should have not settled, it should have been them.
Yeah.
Like, right, they were the ones that settled, and not the people who have more to lose.
Who was
So,
that?
it was a parent, I don't know. I forget what the parent company name is, but they already had $2 billion in debt. Like, for them to have settled, they were the wrong people to have settled. They should have gone to trial, I think. But again, people don't go to trial because they don't know what the final outcome is gonna be.
That's why they are 2
That's why they
billion in
settle.
debt.
But they're already, yeah, exactly, mismanaged. All right, so let's go back to the buyer representation period. So don't be afraid to have a short term there, because you can show some properties that you think is perfect for this buyer, show them to them, then just give them the list that, you know, you identified the properties, these are the ones, if you're interested in moving forward on those properties in the future. And within your
List. So you're
compensation period, you get,
sorry,
yeah.
so you're narrowing it down. You're not just putting all these properties that you're showing to your buyer. You're just narrowing that to whatever they might be interested in.
So like, let's just start, we're working with a buyer, and I have the first page here, is a buyer checklist. So I'm gonna show you in Command how to get to the, into the buyer listing, presentation. There's a buyer presentation, we're gonna do that. Part of the presentation is the checklist, but it's gonna be going over what's important. But I need to know from a buyer, like, what city, if a buyer is telling me they're looking in 4 different cities, they're not really, I need really focus. If someone's telling me they're looking in cities, I'm asking them, where do they work? You know, if there's a significant other, where do they work? Trying to get a middle ground, maybe, who works more? Who travels more? You know, who works from the house more? Are there kids? Do they need to be in a certain school? And I'm really trying to figure out the best possible property for them. Do they need a pool? Do they need a backyard? So that's our job, is to help them realize what'll work for them. Now, paragraph 3 talks about the scope of what this agreement covers. So you can put a location in here. It could say city of Sherman Oaks, city of Encino, city of Los Angeles. It can be county of Los Angeles. if you're working with someone who's tells you their price range is 1 million to 1.5 million, that's their price range. Right in here, 500,000 to 3 million.
Exactly.
Give it a much
Exactly.
broader range than they're telling you.
Oh,
So many times I've seen people say this is my budget,
Yeah.
and then they get up here.
Yeah.
So don't knock yourself out by not having this cover it. You can also put, if you look at 3B, the following specified properties only. So you could use this agreement for one property. Okay? If someone stands up in an office meeting here and says, I have a pocket, it's not on the market. Does anyone have a buyer for it? And you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I have a buyer for that property. You're gonna approach that agent and say, do you have a signed listing? That's the first question. Do you have a signed listing? If they don't have a signed listing, then they need to get something signed by the seller obligating the commissions. Okay, that's called a single party agreement. It's not a listing agreement. Because the listing agreement says if anyone buys the property, that there's gonna be compensation. And so there's some sellers that just don't wanna sign a listing there, right? Now, that's different than a single party agreement. A single party agreement only obligates the seller if they accept an offer from a single party. Okay, totally different than a listing agreement. It's a single party. Seller, if the seller accepts an offer from a single party, then they have to pay a commission. Okay, now, you have the buyer, this agent has the seller. So let's just say let's say the seller, this listing agent has not had anything signed, and they're maybe getting a little pushback. Okay, we want to tell our buyer about this property, but we can't bring them there yet because we don't have an agreement from the seller yet regarding commission. Okay, now we're gonna explain to our buyer, I have a property here that I really think you're gonna love it. The seller is hesitant to sign something. If I show this to you, will you pay my commission? Basically, this is what you're asking. You know, do you have an issue with paying my commission? Now, this is a negotiation. And hopefully, you know, this commission, by the way, can be rolled into the loan. Okay, so just like a purchase, there's a way we can do it.
just increase the price.
Increase the price.
Investors will pay.
Investors, yeah, most
Okay.
investors will
Yeah.
say, bring me a property and I'll pay the commission.
And I'll
Yes.
pay.
Investors have a different mentality.
Yeah,
Investors are looking, is it a good deal? Is it still a good deal even if I pay the commission?
they'll pay
They'll pay,
if
yeah,
the seller just,
right. So that's a good conversation to even have with a residential buyer.
Yeah.
Right, investors don't have a problem with this, because
yeah.
if they see a
get
good
it.
deal, it's still a good deal. So, but this agreement is good just for one property, okay? Now, you have to fill in paragraph 3. Okay, you have to have something there. And I've heard from agents in the past that you do want to be as specific as you can get without getting too specific. So you do want to have some specificity. Okay, let's talk about number 4, compensation to broker. The amount of real estate commission is not fixed by law. They're set individually. So buyer agrees to pay broker as follows: 2.5% of the acquisition price. So you can put that in there, 2.5%. The buyer is on the hook for 2.5%. I want to immediately take you to paragraph 4D, as in David 1. Because you're going to get immediate pushback on this. So that's why I'm taking you to 4D1 right now. So you can just draw an arrow from 4A1 all the way down to 4D1. 4D1 says, if anyone other than the buyer compensates broker for services covered, that amount shall be credited toward the buyer's obligation to pay compensation. So that means your buyer has signed that they are on the hook for paying 2.5%. But 4D1 says that if anyone other than the buyer compensates the broker, they're off the hook. And that person is the seller. Okay, so normally we're gonna see on the MLS a CSO for 2.5%, right? Okay, I don't wanna lose you, I don't wanna lose you. This agreement says that the buyer is responsible for paying commission. Okay, the buyer is responsible. Paragraph 4D1 says, if that commission gets paid by someone else, it gets applied towards the buyer's obligation. So if the buyer is obliged to pay 2.5% and the seller pays 2.5%, the buyer's off the hook.
Unless it's in MLS is 2% or 1.5%.
Well, let's talk about that scenario. If the MLS is advertising 2% and you have a listing, a buyer agreement for 2.5, and the MLS pays 2, technically your buyer would be liable for 0.5%.
Absolutely.
As a business decision, you might not want to ask your buyer for that 0.5%.
I do that all the time.
That's you.
No, really, and for the last 2 years, 3 of them. And they paid, because
they
in
paid.
Orange County, especially Irvine area, it's 1.5% and 2%, and I'm not gonna work for 2%. By the
You
time,
have that so you have this conversation upfront with your client.
yeah.
Yes, you do. Okay, so your client already expects that they might be on the hook for a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good. That's good.
all the
You
time.
don't want to surprise them.
No,
Yeah.
I would tell them, because, I said, my fee is 2.5 minimum. But if it's.
If the scenario,
If in case
offer
the seller
less.
offer 2% or 1.5%, you are responsible for the rest of it.
That's very good. I would say any conversation we have upfront is excellent. That's really my goal in all of real estate, is to have conversations upfront before a scenario happens. That's always what I want to do. I want to have a buyer or seller know what possible outcomes are before they happen. Then there's no surprises. Yeah.
The same situation, as a matter of fact, which, it happened a few months ago. Brian and the escrow company for the seller, they both asked me, oh, you want to get 2.5% and 2%? I said, no. I want the total of 2.5%. And
Okay, so there is a checkbox here. We're gonna get to that. Yes, there is a checkbox.
thank you.
Okay. So let's look at, so 4A1 says 2.5%. It can also be a dollar amount. You can do 4A2, you can just have a flat fee. But we usually do work on percentages here. There's also a checkbox for compensation schedule. A compensation schedule would be like between this price and this price, this percent, this price, that percent. That's a schedule. Paragraph 4B, broker right to compensation. Broker shall be entitled to compensation if during the representation period or any extension, buyer enters into an agreement to purchase, lease, or otherwise acquire the property, and the seller completes the transaction or is prevented from doing so by the default of the buyer. So there has to be a closing in order for any commissions to be liable. The property has to close escrow. Okay, it's gonna be very, very hard for you to get paid if property doesn't close escrow.
Of course.
Of course, I'm gonna say of course, but
Well, we're
Yes.
paid on commission.
yeah, we get paid on closing, yeah. Okay, 4B2, make sure you check that box. Just put a giant circle around that. Don't forget to check that box. 4B2. 4B2 says that this is an exclusive representation contract. If you don't check that box, it's gonna default to 4B1, which is non-exclusive. Okay? Now, I don't think you're gonna get pushback on this part. I don't think you will. I would think if you don't have exclusive, you have nothing, basically. Right? I mean, really, we really want exclusive representation. Okay, cancellation. So in 4BC, you might want to check that number 2 box in 4C. Now, 4C1 says that either buyer or broker may cancel this agreement at any time. You hear what I'm saying? So that might be a reason that the buyer will sign this. You can tell the buyer, you can cancel this at any time. It says right here, 4BC, cancel anytime. Maybe that's fine. Maybe that's okay. Because don't forget, any property that you've already shown, you're gonna give a list of those properties. Right? So that might be a great way to get them to sign it, actually, is because they can cancel anytime. If they're not happy with your services, they can cancel anytime. So paragraph 4C2, let's look at that one real quick. Neither party shall have the right to cancel this agreement prior to expiration except by mutual agreement. So if you both agree, then you can cancel always. But that's just something to think about. And the reason I didn't pre-check here is because this is gonna be very individual. You're gonna size up the client and see how you want to have the relationship going forward with them. Right? If it's a one-off, no, so I'm always about keeping clients for the future. I never burn bridges. I could have the meanest client, and just, so I'm still not gonna burn that bridge. My wife, bless her, she would pick up the phone and say,
I would too.
I'm gonna keep that relationship open. You never know. And it's happened. Years later, I'll get a call, can you do this for me? Right? I keep those relationships open. It doesn't, there's no point in burning a
I
bridge.
love your wife.
My wife, she's from New York.
Yeah, I love her.
I'm LA. I'm Lucy Goosey. She's New York. A friend of yours. Also New York. Okay, all right, now. Okay, let's look at 4D, accounting for payments to broker by others. That's the one, 4D1. If anyone other than the broker compensates broker, that amount shall be credited toward the buyer's obligation. If third-party payments received, okay, now here's where we were talking about what you were saying, Zora. On 4D2. If third-party payments received exceed the buyer's obligation. So we have a 2.5% sign and the CSO in the MLS is 3%.
Oh,
The buyer's on the hook for 2.5, MLS is paying 3.
that's nice.
Now what? If the third-party payments received exceed the buyer's obligation, the excess amount shall be paid to broker. That means we get it.
That's good.
We get the 3%.
That's good.
Okay, unless you check the box. If you check the box, it gets credited back to the buyer. Don't check the box.
No.
Don't check the box.
But my question to you was, it was opposite. 2% in MLS,
2%
2.5% in
Yeah,
here.
then the buyer pays.
No, of course buyers pay, but
It's for you.
the escrow company, no,
Yeah.
the escrow company and even our Brian, they said, do you want the 4.5%?
In addition, they were thinking your buyer's gonna pay and the seller's gonna pay.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and I know, of course not.
Sure, of course not, right? Yeah, they didn't know.
There is no reason, there is no place in here to
But they didn't.
clarify it.
They didn't know, but they were clarifying it with you. And I've seen them clarify it with other agents also.
Yeah, they.
They'll always clarify it. I think it might be that they want the agent to know that.
I just want to make sure I get 2.5%, the rest,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're just trying to get clarity,
That's
that
that's
everyone
okay.
understands
The same page,
what's
yeah.
going on.
That's
Yeah.
good, that's okay.
Okay, 4E, don't forget to put a number in this box. Put a circle around that where I wrote the 180 days. That's the part that says that you're gonna get paid after the expiration of this agreement. So
For
let's,
those.
the properties that you've shown them, only the ones that you've shown them.
That's a good one.
Okay, so let's look at 4E. Additional broker right to compensation. Broker shall be entitled to the compensation provided for in paragraph 4A. So that's the. If within 180 calendar days after expiration or any extension, or if there's a cancellation after the effective date of the cancellation in paragraph 4C. So 4C is cancellation, okay? So it says, okay, buyer enters into an agreement to acquire property for which there was broker involvement prior to the expiration of this agreement or any extension. If there's a cancellation in the time specified, broker delivers buyer a written notice of those properties. The key sentence here is prior. So you gotta be really careful here. Prior to expiration. If you go 3 sentences up above where paragraph 4C is bolded, you'll see it says prior to. Underline that. That is really, really, really important. Prior to, in 4E, the last sentence, it says CAR form NBIP. Go up above that, it says paragraph 4C. Go up above that, it says prior to. Prior to is extremely, extremely crucial here.
So just prior to the.
Prior to, it means that we have to deliver our list to the buyer prior to this being canceled. We can't have a cancellation, we both sign cancellation and then deliver our list. We have to first deliver our list and then we sign cancellation. That is the only way that 180 days or whatever you put in there will be in effect.
When do they count as buyer enters into an agreement is when they.
That's the
sign?
exception. So which agreement are we talking about?
Still on 4D, like I said, you give them a list and then they go down the line and buy it. And they don't want to give you, when do you know, when do they notify you or when do you find
So
out?
that's a good question.
They don't
And
notify.
everybody's telling us.
So they should be notifying you. If they don't notify you, you may not find out until it closes.
So it qualifies, so from beginning, from when they sign the contract, we could technically, it's like, oh, you owe us a commission.
So once you find out that they closed, because their name is now on title,
So closing, from closing.
after closing,
After closing.
after closing, you find out that they bought the property.
Mhm.
If you find out during the deal,
Yeah,
then if you find out during the deal, the question is it listed or not listed? So you don't want to prevent the deal from closing,
Mhm.
but you do want to notify the listing agent of this agreement.
okay.
It's an interesting situation. So let's just pretend for a second that a buyer's in a deal on a property you showed them
Mhm.
and they signed this and you gave them that address. And you find out about it.
Yes,
Okay, now what? Now, I would say you need to contact the attorneys for our office
Mhm.
and follow their instructions.
gotcha.
Their instructions will probably be that they will take your agreement and they'll give it to the listing broker. The listing broker should withhold the buyer side commission. There's gonna be a dispute now. Now, the buyer is really the one who the dispute is with. Right? Now, I want to think about this and talk through it.
Mhm.
We have an agreement with the buyer. The listing agent does not have an agreement with the buyer. So I'm not sure the listing broker cares
You don't care.
because they have nothing to do with the buyer. I'm just
Yeah,
talking
they
through
You're
this.
gonna have to see
You're gonna have
the
to,
agent who sold them. The
Two separate,
buyer's new
two
agent.
separate words.
so the buyer's agent that wrote the offer is entitled to a commission through the listing broker.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to go over the agents and the buyer.
It has nothing to do with the new agent either.
I know,
that's
but
right.
they're gonna have to pay you because.
No, they don't.
Well,
No,
Why
they
can't
don't.
you just go after
You
the
just
buyer?
have to go
Because they
after
signed
the
an
buyer.
offer with the buyer.
yeah, but who's gonna pay it?
The buyer has to pay it. The only person for paying this contract is the buyer.
Then what's gonna happen is a
Not this
really.
contract, we're only talking about this
No,
contract.
because it's happened to me in the past and I had to sue the new agent because they knew that they didn't sell that property. They knew I
Okay.
sold it, but they represented the buyer anyway.
Right, so now we're talking about MLS. Now we're talking about MLS cooperation,
Right.
but this is an issue because we never got to write the offer. We never got to write it.
Yeah, that's
There was no agency created with the listing broker.
Right.
So,
Right,
right, so we only have this with our buyer.
right.
We can only go after the buyer.
Oh, wow.
We can only go after the buyer. So now it's up to our attorneys if they're gonna do it.
It's gonna be really headache to go after the buyer, have a
Depends
lawsuit.
how much we're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, from a I don't know the word, from a press point of view, from optics, what are the optics if Keller Williams Beverly Hills starts suing people,
Yeah,
right? So there might be an optics issue here.
yeah.
We don't want bad press.
Yeah.
I can't speak for the office, right?
They're not gonna sue.
I don't know, hopefully the buyer will do something.
No.
If they don't,
They're not going to.
You just have to
I
bite the
don't know.
bullet.
I mean, the issue is, our licenses are under the broker. And it is the broker's decision to go after it.
Well, what
So-
if you hired a private attorney?
I don't think
It's worth it.
I don't know if you can, because the deal still went under our broker.
Have the broker.
Yeah. I know. I like to think that people are on the up and up, is that right? Will they pay? They won't pay?
No, they wouldn't pay.
They won't.
Especially if the deal
I
is closed, they say, go do whatever you want to do.
All right, I'd like to give more faith in people, but
This is California.
I know,
Yeah.
it's a gentleman's handshake.
Yeah.
All right, next page, disclosure of anticipated payments to brokers by others. This is what I was talking about having to disclose compensation. So F1, broker prior to writing an offer will disclose to buyer the amount of compensation broker expects to receive. So that's what I was talking about. We have to, before we write the offer, we have to tell the buyer, if we're using this agreement, we have to tell the buyer our expected compensation. Okay. So it says here, actually, by providing the buyer with either a copy of the MLS listing showing the cooperating compensation offered to the broker, or a separate document such as the anticipated broker compensation disclosure, which I attached here. I would probably use the MLS printout. Right. The MLS printout, yeah, no. Sometimes not, but it just depends on the situation. So, but we have to do one of them. We have to either give the buyer the MLS printout showing the compensation offered, or we have to give them the form called anticipated broker compensation disclosure. Okay, now F2 says that broker will disclose the final compensation that broker receives from anyone other than buyer. Broker is responsible for payment of compensation if the third party does not pay as anticipated. Buyer is responsible. Okay, so this is keeping the buyer on the hook in number 3. Buyer is always going to be on the hook for the compensation. F2 says that before closing, buyer, it says broker independently or through escrow will disclose the final compensation broker receives from anyone other than the buyer. So we just have to disclose again, there's twice that we're going to disclose the compensation that we're getting. Once before we write the offer, and then second time at closing. Okay, timing, compensation doesn't matter, payment through escrow, pre-existing relationships, agency relationships. So I didn't print the form disclosure regarding real estate agency relationships. That's paragraph 5A. That's always gonna print out with this form. So there's really nothing else here that you know that I want to go over. You can, of course, you can print through it. Okay, we'll look at the next page. The next contract is notice of broker involved properties. So this is the form that you're going to be giving to the buyer. Notice of broker involved properties. This is the one that you want to give before expiration. Okay.
What number are you on?
Where are you?
I'm on, I skipped the rest of the contract because everything else is just boilerplate language. I just wanted to talk about the parts that we're filling in.
But the question for 10, A, B, C, we just,
For 10, paragraph 10,
so like,
advisories.
we just check the boxes.
Those are automatically checked.
That's already.
There are, I didn't include them in the printout, but they come, when you pull up the buyer representation agreement in CAR, they're all attached.
Oh,
For the purposes of this class, I didn't print them out.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll double check.
yeah. I mean, those are just basically disclosures to the buyer, telling them to inspect.
Oh, okay.
That's basically what it is. Okay, notice of broker involved properties. So this is, what did I write here in number 4? It says, insert all addresses here. These are the properties that were emailed or shown to your buyer during your agreement period. If the list is long, check the box below and add a separate list. So you can always check that box and add addendum Addendum 1 is just a giant paragraph and just list all the properties. Now, you can list the properties here that were also emailed to them during the period.
That's,
You should,
but this is gonna get very hairy because you're asking them to sign this before showing them anything. And then throughout the process of dealing with them, you're gonna send them new houses.
well, while you're dealing with them, they're gonna appreciate you, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. But then they'll walk into some random place. and-
But, okay, so I'm doing an open house
Yeah,
and someone walks in without their agent.
yeah.
And I say to them, hi, how are you?
Persuade them.
Welcome to my open
Come
house.
to you, right,
Do you have an agent?
right.
Yes, they say yes. Have you signed anything with them? If they say yes, that's hands off.
Well, what if they don't say yes? And some open house agents maliciously don't ask them and they just persuade them.
So but look, it's someone who's signed a buyer broker agreement, they know they have an agent. Like they'll say right up front, I have an agent. They'll walk in, I have an agent.
But then like, what happens?
But I instruct them. So this is part of the interview process. I'm gonna say to them, when you walk into a property, let the listing agent know that you have an agent. And when they ask you who, say my name. If they know me, that's fantastic.
Okay, and then properties, well, let's say you're dealing with somebody for 3 months and you send them properties along the way, they already signed this, and then during the.
I'm sorry, you're dealing with someone for 3 months.
Yeah, let's just say
Okay,
whatever.
and your agreement's still in effect.
It's in effect.
Okay.
And then you send them new properties, email them new properties.
Okay.
And then it expires.
Okay.
And then now it's expired, but you did show them
You,
that property.
but you
but
never
it's
sent
not
them,
on-
you never sent them the list?
But you, well, because it's a new
If
property.
you
that
never,
wasn't on
if you
it.
never sent them the list,
Because they signed this long before.
Is if you can update the list.
Yeah, like,
so let's go back, we have to go back to see what obligates them, so.
well, these new properties, new listings come up, and then what do? You keep having them sign a new.
So
agreement.
this contract specifically talks about CAR form and EIP.
Which is what?
If you look at paragraph, on first page paragraph 4E. Look at 4E. It talks about that exclusion period. That exclusion period is the compensation period after it expires.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it. So you have a period after it expires.
Yes,
Got it.
but you only have that period after it
Right.
expires if you deliver form NBIP prior to expiration.
Right,
So that is like really
Right.
crucial.
right.
So this form NBIP
Oh, right.
has to be delivered prior to. Yeah,
Okay, that's like, okay.
that's the whole key. If it's not delivered prior to,
Then it's just.
then they can go use whoever they want.
Oh,
Yeah.
You need to deliver it like certified mail?
No, email's fine. It just has to be delivered.
Where's?
So you want
Oh, I see.
you want to make sure it was received.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So you might add something in your email that they have to reply to.
Or
Yeah,
CC to yourself.
Yeah, but it should be received. You want to make sure. it's
Well, you can always in your email say, please respond.
Yeah, but
that
if they
you
don't,
received.
if they don't,
Yeah.
they might not want to.
Yeah.
So, but there should be maybe something, think clever, how can you be clever, that something they have to respond to. It is my understanding you renew the agreement.
Is this for extending a contract or getting a new contract with
Right,
expired?
so we're talking about the buyer representation agreement, getting it. And then we're talking about when there's gonna be a period of representation. And then there's also an exclusion period which comes after a representation. So you're working really hard in your representation period to find property for them, really hard.
Right.
If they don't write an offer on a property that you showed them during that period, and then before that period expires, you send them a list of all the property that you showed them. Then there's gonna be an exclusion period that if they change their mind and do end up wanting to write an offer on one of those properties, then you're covered.
Oh,
Right before the expiration.
You have to send the list before the expiration of the period, yeah.
Is that the one at 180 days?
Yeah, so you can have 360 in there. I just put 180. It could be 90, it could be 180, it could be 360.
I try to get
Okay,
6
but you have-
months.
6 months. I try 6 months. 6 months is the norm. I would say 180 is the norm.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, even in our own listing agreement, we have an exclusion period. In the regular seller listing agreement, there's an exclusion period where we should put 180. And then in that situation, you know, sometimes you're gonna call an agent and say, can I show your property? I see your listing on such and such street. Can I show it tomorrow at 3 p.m.? And that agent's gonna say to you, yes, what's your client's name? They're not asking you to steal your client. They're asking you because they're keeping a list, just in case the property doesn't sell. They have a list of everyone that came through that they can now give to the seller. It's for their exclusion period. They're not trying to steal your client.
Right.
It's their exclusion period list. So, excuse me, as practice, we should have, for every property that we deal with, we should have a folder, or we should have some file on our phone or something where every single person, we log who it is, and just keep a list of the names of the people that come through. It happens that things don't sell. It happens, you know,
It does.
it happens.
Okay, in this, which is notice of broken properties in paragraph 4.
Okay,
Analyzing the property, if I were merely sending the buyer a list of properties shall not be deemed broken or without documented action taken on the part of.
oh, interesting, okay.
Such as analyzing the property.
Okay, so let's look at that, because that's important. Notice of broker involved properties, paragraph 4. Let's read it together. So this is the definition of a broker involved property. So the broker has to be involved. What does that mean? Broker involved properties. Broker involvement means any of the following. The buyer physically entered and was shown the property by the broker. Okay, so we take someone, show them the property physically. Okay, number 2. The broker showed the property to the buyer virtually. Okay, how do you do that?
It happened a lot during the pandemic.
Okay, so that means I'm walking through FaceTime with my client. This is the property. Okay, all right. Number 3, broker submitted to seller a signed written offer from the buyer. Okay, so if you wrote an offer from someone, you don't have to give that on a list. Right? So that was a broker involved property. You already wrote the offer for that. Okay, number 4, the property was introduced to the buyer by the broker or one for which the broker acted on buyer's behalf. However, merely sending buyer a list of properties shall not be deemed broker involvement without documented action on the part of brokers, such as analyzing the property for the buyer, specifically assisting the buyer in the potential acquisition of the property, or communicating with the seller or seller's agent regarding buyer's potential acquisition. Okay, so it's not enough to just email. If you have someone on automatic email, that's not enough. You would have to actually say to them, like, you see something that pops up on the automatic email and you're like, wow, that's a great one. And then you email your client separately. You just received this property. Check it out. It's awesome. Let me know what you think.
And text them.
And then yeah, so property was introduced to buyer broker for one broker, merely sending a buyer list property should not be deemed broker involvement without documented action on the part of brokers, such as analyzing the property for buyer. Analyzing to me means a CMA. That's what that means to me. That's, I mean, at the most, a CMA would for sure solve that. So if you said this property is worth, I think it's worth what they're asking because, and you give a list of reasons, then that would be research, I think.
And never delete your emails or text messages.
Okay, I don't delete emails, but text messages, if they're funky, I do delete. I guess I'm not gonna delete them.
When you're- Well, okay, because now you get a lot of people under 40,
Yeah,
that's their method of communication.
texting.
They just want you to text them.
And then which method are they texting? Which app are they using?
I just did a text messaging app and they want you to text them all day and then that's their part of communication. So
Okay, good point, good point.
I mean, older people don't want you to text them, they want you to call them, so every client is different.
Right.
Every client is different. You have to ask them, what's your
preferred method of contact?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes. All right, I want to show everyone, the buyer. The buyer,
It just makes me.
I know.
listing presentation.
Okay.
It's the buyer listing presentation.
Oh,
Okay, so everyone should have access to command. Everyone's got access to command. I'm gonna put this on my shared folder. So everyone can reference this, but I'm just gonna show you really quick.
It's so cold here.
Cold in here. It could be worse.
the way I did this, I'm freezing.
It's like freezing.
It's either freezing or there's no air.
I have no idea what the electric bill is.
We should do class outdoors, huh?
Patios,
Patios.
when it's not so hot.
Outside the defrost, yeah.
So in command, we have, obviously, you can put your contacts and you can do transactions under opportunities. We have something here called designs. In designs, you can create a ton of marketing. So one of the things here in designs is, I have some instructions that, sorry I didn't print, but I'll put them on my shared folder. Not too hard to get to.
How do we get to your share?
If you don't have access to my shared folder, just email me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just email me. My email address is JJ WALLACK JJ Wallack at KW.com. JJWALLACK at KW. JJWALLACK.
All capital.
No, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter? Okay.
At KW.com and just say shared folder.
Okay.
And then I will send you, you're gonna get a link to join my shared folder, which has tons of listing presentations, sample contracts all filled out. So you have templates how to fill out contracts. There's tons of scripts and dialogues. There's books in there. Anything that I think is beneficial, I'll be throwing in there. Okay, so. Okay, after you log into command, you're gonna click the designs icon. And then you're gonna click, there's a green button up in the upper right-hand corner called Create Design. See that? So create design. And then what kind of thing are you creating? Something that you want to email, something you want to post to social media, print or video. So you can also import photos of textual listing. That's interesting. All right, I'm just going to press print because right now I'm going to be printing my buyer presentation.
Buyer presentation.
This is for a buyer presentation. So I'm going to press print and hit next.
Okay.
And then it's going to ask me what do I want print material for? Do I want print material for a listing? So you can have a listing presentation here. Do I want a buyer, something for a buyer, for lead generation? So you guys can go through all this and check out all the different things that you can design through here.
Okay.
This is all through command. But right now I'm going to go to buyer, I'm going to check, and there's a buyer presentation. So I'm going to click on buyer presentation, and I have all these different buyer presentations to choose from. And they are, I think there's 5 of them, and it repeated itself for some reason, probably because I just was looking at them. So they are all the same information, they just look different, so you can look at them. Now, when you go into them, let's just pick that one. When you go and see, it says use in the upper right-hand corner. Yeah. Actually, if you hold your cursor over them, it'll cycle through the pages and you can just see what it looks like. Pretty cool. Okay, there's a modern one here, the black one. Let's see what that looks like. You might like the look of that one.
I have a question. Can you like change color and stuff like that?
You can do everything here. So-
Okay.
So like if I just press use on this one, okay? Use, it's gonna bring it up for me. And then this is the edit screen. This is the edit screen. So I'm gonna have to go in and change these things. All right, so I can bring in images, I can bring in logos, I can change text, I can add text. So you like here, first name, last name, right click for more options. So I'm gonna right click that. This computer is just a little slow. I'm right click. I can. So, ooh, this is interesting.
What's that?
Gary Keller is working on artificial intelligence
Oh boy.
for integrated with command.
Okay.
I have not played with this yet, but there is artificial intelligence happening with your marketing. I will play with it. As I learn it, I will teach it. Let's just choose it for right now. Why not? AI. Did it do anything? I don't know.
That is online.
Yeah, I don't know. So, but I am going to change this. So first name, last name. So JJ. I want to go all caps. I don't know. But this is all customizable. So there's also, we have our own logos. So this says KWDBA name. And you can see up here in the left, I have my assets. One of the things I saved here is the KW Hills. So I can bring that down there. I'm gonna delete this one. Gonna bring this here. So what I would suggest is everyone take the time and go, you're gonna go through page by page.
Pages.
Let's see, so. Okay, so season's 30 pages. Oh, yeah, if I click the pages, I can go page by page. And I am gonna go page by page and I'm gonna edit every single page. So this is something that you guys should work on. You always wanna work on your buyer presentation and your listing presentation. Those two things. You can send this by email, but you can also do in person. So these are just things as an agent that you should be working on, your buyer presentation and your listing presentation. Next week, we're gonna do the listing presentation. But I wanted to show you guys where to go for this, okay?
What do you prefer, in person or email?
I think it just depends on your client.
Okay.
If you have a client that cannot get out of the office and they're just used to doing everything email and text, that's your client, right? Now, one thing is if I have a client, I just want to show you guys that this is something I spent time editing. So I put my name here, I put the KW hotels, buyer consult. I put for Elon Musk, my client. Didn't think bigger.
I just put my mom's name.
Yeah.
The example, she's my guinea pig, so.
So I just went through, I dragged my picture in, I put the KW Beverly Hills, and you just go through every page. And
Great option to have.
But like you have a choice of like editing or like change.
every single thing can be edited,
Yeah.
everything.
All the verbiage.
So let's see. Yeah, edit,
Yeah.
everything can be edited. That's fully customizable.
That's very.
I'm curious to see what the artificial intelligence part of it is. That's pretty cool.
Try it again, see what happens.
Okay.
So wait, JJ, you have to do that for each property?
No, for the buyer presentation,
You can include all of them.
you can have a standard one where it says prepared for which client. You don't have to put anything. Like this says a custom consultation prepared with care for Elon Musk. I can just say a custom consultation prepared with care. and just leave out a name.
You know, but I mean, you're gonna put a specific property on there, right? Like the property.
No,
buyer?
not really, because this is a buyer. I want to work with this buyer on multiple properties.
Okay, gotcha. So you're not showing anything.
Right, this is just for them. This is my consultation. So at my consultation, my goal is to show my value.
Okay,
And it's to get them to work with me exclusively.
okay, so it's.
So,
That makes sense.
right, okay, now let's talk real quick about verbiage and dialogue. So I showed you guys where to go in command, right? So in command, you go to designs, and then you click the green button, create design.
Create
Okay, and
design,
that'll take you, then you can choose all the different things that you
and
want.
then print, and then,
Yeah, but then you can decide if you want to create a social media post or a print post or an email, yeah.
oh, okay.
And then also in the designs, you can create your campaigns. So if you want to, there's a campaign button. So if you want to put someone on a 33 touch or an 8 or a 12 direct or an
Yeah,
8x8. So, and when we meet someone, we should put them immediately on a 12 direct, which means they'll get one email a month from us.
okay.
And then for someone that's hot, we want to put them on a 33 touch. They're gonna get 33 touches from us over the year. Okay. Our value, right? So the goal is to to invite the buyer here to the conference room. And just like you're gonna sit with a seller and have them sign a listing agreement, when you meet with a buyer, especially from someone's out of state, they're only here for a short time, that's perfect to meet them here in the conference room. And you can even meet them the morning of showing them property.
Yeah.
Like, let's meet first at the office. And then this is how I work. Like, first I want to find out, what's the most important thing to you. I know there's an agent in Colorado. I just remember when I was doing coaching, she was one of the coaching clients. I was also a coaching client. She had, I'll put it in the share folder also. They're just like I printed that one page in the beginning, which was the interview. She had a multi-page interview. And whenever a new buyer would call her, she would open her drawer and take it out. And then she'd start question 1. What area are you looking in? What is a must-have? What was a no-go? And she's basically trying to narrow down the focus. Like, what areas are you looking in? Someone who tells me they're looking in 4 or 5 areas, I really need to focus. I really need to get them focused on one area. It happens that people are looking in an area, something awesome comes up over here and they buy it.
Yeah.
It happens, right?
It does.
It does.
Thank you so
It does. Okay, thank you. So, okay, where I wanted to go with this was you as the agent, we are talking about geographical farming. We're talking about like areas that you guys are calling, emailing, going door knocking, going after an area. If you have an area, that's your area. When you find out about a property that's gonna be coming for sale in the future, it's not ready to go on the market yet. Who are you calling? What buyer do you call first? This is really important.
Not the parent, but the.
No, but you are talking to a seller. They're getting ready to sell in like a month. But if you can bring them a certain price, they'll sell now. Who's your first buyer call? You have all these buyers that you're working with. Your first buyer you're calling is the one who signed a buyer agreement.
The buyers.
They're loyal to you, you're loyal to them, right?
Oh,
Right, so that's, your conversation at your first initial meeting, getting them to sign this is it's a question you can pose to your buyer. Like, who do you think my first call is going to be? It's going to be to you. Like, we're working together, obviously, I'm going to tell you not only about the properties that are on the market, but properties that are off market. You're my client. I'm working full-time to find you a property. This is what you're hiring me for.
so basically, it's like a golden ticket for you.
Yeah, if I am engaging a buyer's agent to find a property for me, I'm just talking about myself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything about Colorado Springs, Colorado. I want to move to Colorado Springs, Colorado. I'm gonna do some research, maybe try to find an agent there. I'm gonna call that agent. I'm gonna say I'm looking for a property. That agent is gonna go down a list with me, asking me what I'm looking for. And then they're gonna say, I'm gonna send you my buyer representation agreement. And they're gonna email me their buyer representation agreement, right? What do I, okay, I have no problem signing that,
Yeah.
right? Of course, that's how they work. That's their standard of business. That's how they work. They're gonna send me their buyer representation agreement. And if I have any questions about it, I'm gonna call them and ask, and they'll answer. You know, this is the commission that I charge. It usually gets paid for by the seller. In the event that I find a property for you that's perfect for you and the seller is not paying commission, then I would want you to pay the commission and we can probably roll it into the loan. Now, we can roll it into the loan different ways. We can ask the seller to increase the sale price by that percentage, right? And then back it out on their side. So if we were going for a property that's $500,000 and the commission, so I don't know, it's 25,000 or 12.5, whatever it is.
No.
Instead of the purchase offer going at $500,000, we'll do it for 512. And then it'll come off the seller side, but the buyer actually paid the 12.5 more, it'll get rolled into the loan. There are lenders that are totally okay rolling into the loan without increasing the purchase price. So it's up to the lender and up to the individual lender. But this is your standard way of doing business. Now, going forward, I have no idea what's happening with the lawsuits.
Right.
Again, buyers need representation. This is really a caveat emptor business. Buyers have to be careful, and this is why we have inspections. Buyers have to know what they're buying. Buyer beware, caveat emptor. Buyers need representation. So.
Can they make it, the state, can they make it to law, say, oh, we're gonna give you like a set commission, like, no matter what?
So, I've been playing with this over and over in my head.
Yeah.
And I just don't know, I don't know where it's gonna go. The NAR is advocating that there need to be buyer's agents. And that buyers will be at a disservice without that. A buyer walking into a listing where the listing is not paying any commission to a buyer's agent, it puts that buyer at a severe disadvantage and potential harm. So they are advocating that. We just don't know how the judge is gonna rule on it.
Can I see your card again?
The card.
Oh, yeah, your information for what I was.
Sure. So it didn't send there. If you look up my last name, it's not in there.
No.
Yeah, just hold it on there. Just hold it. I usually tap the top of the phone.
Do you know what the concierge auction is?
You might have to hold it on top of the phone. Just touch concierge auctions. Yes, they're coming right now.
Yeah, what is that? I don't know.
Okay, so concierge auctions is an auction. It's an online auction house.
So new agents don't need to be there.
You can find out about it. So it's an online auction house that does high-end properties.
Yeah, the app.
And
Just
basically,
videos.
they publicize the property worldwide,
use that for like.
and you can bid for property online. Back in 2007, 2008, when there were tons of foreclosures, there was a lot of bidding online for properties. But this is a higher end company that they do that, and $30 million, $50 million properties. So the issue is the buyer pays a buyer premium. So whatever the buyer ends up winning, they're gonna pay a 12% premium. There's an incentive though, if they register early, they'll only pay a 6% premium. You don't have to do anything as the buyer's agent, except when the buyer registers on the website for a specific property, they need to put your name down. They need to put your name down. But it's pretty cool. All right, guys. All right, so my goal so everyone knows, help you guys get into growth. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. So money, right? Awesome.
I see.
Which happens?
About this.
So this is equal?
Yeah, how does this work?
So
I think like you have to Maybe one time, because you barely
we
come
need
to
to make sure that.
barely,
Yeah.
you barely come and you have
This is.
office here.
No, 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 yeah. No, I
How you
didn't.
doing?
No, that's fine, but we just need to make sure that there's a certain turnover. So I want, when I look at an area of the farm, I want to make sure there's a 3% turnover. So if there's 1,000 homes, there have to be 30 sales, 3%. If there's 500 homes, which is generally the target farm, 500 homes, then maybe 50%. So, we can do that in the MLS.
Okay, yeah, I just talked to Sophia, like they had to wait for the board of realtors to process it,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm like
Okay.
behind on the MLS, right?
Oh, no problem.
So they said that there's nothing that I need to do on my end, just they're just waiting.
Sure, just
Just stay in touch with me.
Okay.
One thing at a time,
Yes.
there's a lot, we'll do one thing at a time, and then we'll just make sure if you're gonna go after an area, then we just wanna make sure that there's turnover, that I can give you the name of the farm. Let me. Yay.
And the Cromwell.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you, JJ.